Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast brought to you by the Draft Professors. Today, I am joined by Draft Professor Daniel. Daniel, it's Monday. It's great to see you. Great weekend of football on Saturday. A really good weekend of football on Sunday. And here we are on Monday to talk about some college quarterbacks. But how would you describe the Indiana-Ohio State game?
Man, it was awesome. It was a dogfight. If anyone says you didn't like that game, then check your pulse because it was awesome. We got to see some good run stoppage there. We got to see some quarterbacks get hit in the mouth first play. Mendoza, his little brother comes in. He comes back in, and I don't know if that's going to be good enough for the Heisman. We'll see what the Heisman voters think. But man, it was crazy. I didn't think Ohio State was going to lose, but I didn't think they were going to win the Triple Crown either. You got to look at the rivalry game, their Big Ten game, their conference, and then the national championship. I didn't think they were going to win all three. I do think if these teams meet again, I would take the Buckeyes, but you can't discredit Cignetti when he's done in that 2 years at Indiana. It's been unprecedented, and they have talent all up and down. It's not just one-sided here and there. Both teams are pretty much talented from top to bottom.
Hey, and while we are on the air, there's breaking news. Okay. Ian Rappaport reporting the Colts are bringing Phillip Rivers out of retirement.
Wow.
And it said potential Hall of Fame. Okay, I was about to say he's not in the Hall of Fame yet, is he?
Man,
this would be awesome. Like seriously, he didn't go out well the last time he played for Indy. If he plays better, this is going to be a better end for his career, in my opinion. So, congratulations to Phillip Rivers.
Congratulations.
Big news.
That is. I was curious though. That is a little shocking though, because I did like what I seen in bits and pieces from Riley Leonard from when he stepped in, and I thought maybe they were going to rock with him for the rest of the year. But to see they still wanted to still develop Leonard and not throw him in there too early. They brought in a proven guy like Rivers, and yeah, maybe he gets to rewrite his ending a little different now. That's nice.
I think you brought in Riley Leonard to redshirt him this year. And the Colts are fighting for the division title.
Yeah.
Right? There's a difference. You don't go with Riley Leonard if you're expecting to win the division title. If you trade for Sauce Gardner, you're signing Phillip Rivers. You're all in.
Yeah. And this is just like when the Browns called Flacco out of retirement. They were in that playoff hunt. They's like, okay, we want to get a proven guy. We like pretty much where we're at in all the other positions. So let's get someone who's already been there, done that. And that I like to see it, that's awesome. That's awesome. They're still in it. They're not throwing it in the towel just because they're hurt. They're still trying to, make a playoff push, which is cool. So, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And we just went through, 5 weeks of podcasting on 3 quarterbacks each?
Yeah.
So I think we podcasted on 15 quarterbacks. So today, Hank, Dom, Daniel, we're going to do the quarterback big boards. And then Hank has a final exam. Dom's son has a wrestling meet. So you and I are here to do the quarterback big boards. I have a question before we get into the boards.
Yeah.
We were discussing quarterbacks on a different podcast on Sunday. And Ty Simpson has another year of eligibility. But I think when we covered Ty Simpson, we said he's better off going into the draft as a 23-year-old with a year of eligibility left than to go back to school and try to raise his stock, because as a 24-year-old, your stock can only go so high. Do you remember that discussion?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think it's a big factor. And I think next year's class, plays a part in that as well. Because we can't, it's always a crapshoot. We don't know what these classes are going to do this year as well as next year, let alone, down the line. We don't know. But I do think from what we've seen this past year and for what we can kind of forecast, professor-like, I guess, I think next year's class is just better. I really do think next year's quarterback's class is better. I think he's better off just coming out this year. And We'll see. We'll see. Especially if Dante Moore. What if he stays? I still have Dante Moore, spoiler alert, coming out this year. But if he doesn't, then that makes the quarterback class that much weaker, and that just makes a bigger case of why Ty Simpson should stay in the draft. So I'm very curious. I don't know. I would tell him to come ahead and go out. DeBoer's leaned on him so much in the wrong way this year to where a lot of the weight has been on his shoulders, which I know he's a quarterback, but it just hasn't been his system they've been running with Ty Simpson has not been ideal. They cannot run the ball. So
okay. So let's do a quick review of quarterback eligibility. This is Dom's top 10 quarterback list.
Okay.
Darian Mensah is likely returned to school, right? Like if you're betting money, you're putting all the money and you're not even hedging the bets that Mensah is going to declare, right?
Well, I thought that until I'm seeing, a lot of these people push that he's might be coming out. We've seen the Shrine Bowl. They're not, saying he's coming out, but they're putting a lot of stuff out on there. So I'm curious. I think it's a coin flip. I don't know if he's going to come out this year. I think it's going to be, I just don't know. I think if he does come out, it's more of some more guys stayed in, and someone's telling him, a certain team that he likes, wants to play in their system is telling them they want him. I could see him staying in this year's draft, but I could also see him going back to school, getting that other year of NIL money, especially with them coming off a conference championship. Maybe he'll get some more help there in Duke. I think that's a toss-up. I have him as an or on my list at number 4. So with my list, I have Jaden Maeva or Darian Mensah there at the 4 slot. I don't know if Maeva is going to come out as well next year or not. I think that's still up in the air. But if I do think he should come back to school. Both Mensah and Maeva will benefit way more coming back to school than I think Ty Simpson would, in my opinion.
Okay. Brendan Sorsby from Cincinnati has another year left, correct?
Yeah. Yes, I do not think he comes out this year.
Right.
I'm hearing he's having 5 NIL offers for around $4 to $5 million a piece. So he's gonna definitely stay, in my opinion, in college. Is he gonna stay in Cincinnati? I don't know, but I do think he is gonna stay in college.
Yep. Lenora Sellers has 2 years of eligibility left.
Yeah.
The likelihood he declares, I think, is low. You just covered Jaden Maeva of USC.
Yes.
Maeva could be in the draft, but is likely returned to school.
Yeah.
If we had to bet. Okay. So if you look then at the top 10 list, every single quarterback in Dom's top 7 has a year of eligibility left.
Yeah.
They do not have to be in this draft class. And I think for the next 29 days,
yeah,
that's the world that we're in. So for the next 29 days, this is the quarterback board, ladies and gentlemen. It is December 8th as we record this podcast. Okay. This list is going to change. And what we are looking for, Mendoza, if I'm a betting man, he's going to declare. His younger brother is his backup quarterback at Indiana. He's going to declare, so his younger brother gets a shot to start at Indiana.
Definitely.
So Mendoza, I think, is in the draft class. Dante Moore, I do think it's a coin flip. But realistically, if you're going to go as a top 2 draft pick, top 3, I think the worst case is Dante Moore would be a top 5 draft pick. And that's just based on the team's choosing. But Dante Moore is worthy of being taken 1st or 2nd overall.
Oh, most definitely. He's my quarterback 1 on my list.
Yep.
I have Dante Moore quarterback 1 in my list.
Yep. So Dante Moore, another year of eligibility. But the way that I would analyze the situation with Dante Moore, if you are a first-round quarterback, and I'm going to go verify this as I'm talking, but if you are a first-round quarterback, you're making $16 million guaranteed over 4 years. It's about $4 million a year. So what is the yearly salary of NFL?
And you got to think he's making about, you said 14 million for a first rounder. If he does come back to school, he's looking at about probably 6 million. I would say around there, 5 million, 6 million to come back to school. So I really do think it's all about a fit. And who do you see at the top? If you're projected a top 2 pick, okay, well, who's got the first 2 picks? If I don't like any of those fits, then I'm probably going to come back to Eugene. But I still think he should come out. In my personal opinion, I think it would be a really good fit if Atlanta would trade up to get Dante Moore.
Yep, and I was too low at 16 million. I wasn't even close.
16? Okay.
16 million is what pick 32 makes.
Okay.
Cam Ward, his contract was $43 million. So Cam, right? I was off by a factor of 3. So anyway, so let's go back to the quarterback board. So if you think of Dante Moore and he's guaranteed to make somewhere between 20 and 35 million, depending upon, if he's picked 2 or if he's picked 5. That's larger than any NIL deal.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, you got to come out. That's why I have him at 1. I think he's going to come out.
And to your point, when you're ready to go that high, you have to come out, because if you notice on Dom's list, you don't see Carson Beck, right? So Carson Beck is outside of Dom's top 10, but 2 years ago, we would have had Carson Beck up higher. When you're younger, you're going to be graded higher because NFL scouts don't think you can still modify your game if you're 21. They don't believe that your game is going to change if you're 24.
Yes, I agree. And that's why another point where Ty Simpson should go ahead and come out instead of, season there another year. Yeah, like I said, that's life-changing money. You got to go ahead and come out, in my opinion, for Dante Moore. And with that same breath, with how many quarterbacks we're seeing, they get picked in the first round, that's why I think we could possibly see a Mensa or a Mayava come out. It could happen just on a numbers standpoint alone. In my personal opinion, but I would love to see them both battle it out in a Heisman race next year.
Yep. And the reason that you would come out is that there's a list of quarterbacks that are not here.
Right.
That are next year.
Right.
Okay. So theoretically, Arch Manning could declare next year. Right. But he would still have another year of eligibility left. So next year is the first. Well, Arch is eligible this year.
This year, yes.
But we'll be having the same conversation with Arch for the next 2 off seasons, I think. Because I actually think Arch is going to play 2 more years in college.
Yeah, for him to come out just off 1 year's full starter, I think would be crazy.
Right. So next year, we talk about Arch Manning. We're confident that Lenoris Sellers is probably next year. Definitely. Mayava is next year probably. So a player like Sorsby, he's competing with at least 3 or 4 other really big names. In addition to that, who's the Georgia quarterback?
That is Gunnar Stockton. He's got a year of eligibility as well. I think he'll probably come back. Yeah,
so Gunnar Stockton is probably returning to school, but he'll be in next year's draft class.
Right.
And then there's a lot of other prospects.
Oh, yeah.
Scattered around the country that, I can see Mayava coming out because you're better off being that second-round pick this year, and maybe you get to a slightly better team. Right? Because what you have to look at this list, the Rams could grab you in round 2, and you are the heir apparent to Matthew Stafford. You're better off doing that this year.
Yes.
Than trying to go high next year, because if you go high next year, you're going to go to a worse team.
Yeah, you better. The Rams have been looking for their guy, their heir apparent for some time. Bennett and the other one there from TCU, Duggan, has not worked out. So, yeah, I agree. That's what I'm saying. That's why I have the Mayava or Mensa there at the 4. I do think one of those are going to come out just because it's a numbers game. And, we would not be sitting here saying this if if Klubnik, Nussmeier, and Aller had the year we thought everyone was going to have. So it would be a total different conversation if they would have showed up like we thought, and these guys would probably be a shoe-in on coming back. But it's changed the whole landscape when you throw in that curveball, and then you don't know. You throw in those three guys who kind of, went down on the boards, kind of fell off a little bit. Then you had to throw in the factor of some other guys who might not come in. So a lot of factors, but I would say my board, I have, Dante Moore, Fernando Mendoza, number 2. I do have Ty Simpson coming out at number 3. And then, like I said, Mayavo or Mensah at 4. But 5 is where it gets really tricky. And then I want to ask you, Jim, do you think there's going to be more or less 4 quarterbacks taken in the first round this year?
That's a great question.
I think
I need a little bit more time to answer that, but you teed me up, so let's go on Jim's quarterback rant. Okay, so Daniel, thank you so much for the question. How many quarterbacks do I think go in round 1?
Yeah,
there's a part of me that thinks. So you gave me 4 as the over/under, and there's a part of me that thinks it could be 5 or 6.
I think it could be 2 because I have it starting at my 5 list, just to throw it in here to your consideration. Sawyer Robertson at 5. I have Drew Aller at 6. I got Diego Pavia at 7. And then Cade Klubnik I have at 8. He was really close to John Mateer. I had to put him up at John Mateer just a little bit, in my opinion, even though John Mateer is in the playoffs. I think Klubnik's going to prove that he does have way better mechanics than of the 3 quarterbacks that he was slated against coming into the season. But 9 to Mateer. Then at 10, I have Garrett Nussmeier. And then 11 starts the Trinidad Chambliss over Carson Beck situation, which I have here, which is very interesting. I think Trinidad Chambliss I think someone's going to take a shot on him. And then I have my first G5 guy here, which is Caton Hauser. This is East Carolina at 13.
Yep. So anyway, going back to the over-under, here is the logic. Okay, we as a channel, we as draft professors have been covering quarterbacks since May. So for example, Fernando Mendoza, we covered over the summer. Dante Moore, we covered over the summer. Lenora Sellers was on the list in the summer. Nussmeier was on the list. Cade Klubnik was on the list, and there were plenty of others, right? Okay, so what I listen for, like you guys do all these scouting reports, and every draft professor, including Daniel, you guys do a great job. What I'm listening for is the player projected to be an NFL starter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Drew Allar is not on this top 10 list. But if you were to talk to me 12 months ago, we were talking about Drew Allar going 2nd overall, possibly to Cleveland in last year's draft.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So my opinion is that you can't go from being 2nd overall to a day 3 player if you're a quarterback. Because so much of the eval is projection anyway. The fact that Allar didn't put up great tape, it was still a projection last year. We're still doing the same projection. We're just saying, he didn't take the step. He's not in my top 10.
Yes. I do think I will give the rest of everyone's, I guess, a little break here is everyone did say he did have to take that next step. I don't think no one you could hear throughout the summer saying, oh, he's good right now. He's just coming back to maybe win the Natty. Like, no, everyone knew he had some stuff to clean up, and it just didn't, get as clean as we thought. But in my personal opinion, after watching a lot of tape of him this year, I think the coaching has to go into it. I give him and Klubnik a lot of more slack than I do Nussmeier. Someone might not think that's crazy because they had a coaching change as well. But I just think those other 2 lack a lot more natural skill. Possess a lot more natural skill than Nussmeier.
Yeah. So let's talk about Klubnik for a second, because that's exactly where I wanted to go. So Klubnik, if you listen to the scouting report in the summer, it was NFL arm.
Yeah.
He made a big jump from 2023 to 2024. And there was about a 5 or 6 game stretch of 2024 where people are saying if we get that Klubnik, he's going first overall.
Right.
So he has shown flashes. He still hasn't put it together. Okay. But if the scouting report over the summer said that is an NFL arm, that is a quarterback that can start a game in the National Football League. Okay. If you project as a starter at any position in the draft, you're going on day 1 or 2. If you're an immediate starter, it's day 1. Usually a first round grade is a player that's an immediate starter.
Right.
Right. And then a second round grade is maybe a tier below that. Somebody that maybe needs a little bit of coaching, but in the right scheme will be starting by the end of their rookie year.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think with these two guys, in my opinion, with Klubnik and Alar, they really get the benefit of doubt with me. Why? Is because they don't turn the ball over. There's so many guys that they drop in the draft is because they just can't stop throwing it to the other team. These guys don't have that problem. They don't turn the ball over. So I do think that's going to help them when it comes draft time. And, man, I really would not be surprised if both of them be a starter, at least for a fill-in or a starter for a year or two. You know, I really do think they have a spot in the league for a long time, both those guys, in Klubnik and Drew Aller, in my opinion.
Right. So with Drew Aller, with Cade Klubnik, I do think there's some risk. There's more risk taking them than with Simpson or Moore or Mendoza.
Oh, yeah.
But ultimately, if your quarterback depth chart says we need a player in that room within the next, I'm going to say 24 games. So like I look at like a team, like the Rams are a great example of, in the next 24 games, I don't know that Matthew Stafford's going to be able to start for the Rams.
No.
Right? Like he might be able to do it again next year. Like if he's having an MVP level year, but meaning the Rams are going to be in the quarterback market right now because the two guys they have behind Stafford that they've taken a swing on, I'm saying that they've missed. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So they're going to be looking. Now, Miami may be looking to get out of a quarterback contract. Arizona may be looking to get out of a quarterback contract. Now, Miami drafted Ewers, but I don't think drafting Ewers late last year prevents Miami from taking a day 2 quarterback pick this year.
Totally agree.
Right. So like you had mentioned Sawyer Robertson. Yeah. This was another player. Listen to what was said in the summer. Okay. His mechanics are all over the place. So Sawyer Robertson hasn't fixed his mechanics. But when Sawyer Robertson's on, like it's you know, I've watched him play. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say he reminds me of Brett Favre, but he does throw to the other team similar to how often Brett Favre would throw to the other team too. Yeah,
it's weird with him having like this big body and real long. You would think his problem would be overthrowing, but it's weird. His big problem is underthrowing. I think when we're going to get into workout season and a lot of the compression gear mode here and pro days and combine, I do think he'll probably get passed up by Aller or a Pavi or Klubnik. I think that'll happen naturally. But right now I have him at 5. I just got to see. I would like to see what Klubnik does. That he's out of when he gets out of the Clemson umbrella and gets out of that bubble. Same thing with Aller, gets out of that Penn State bubble. Sometimes it's good for some of those quarterbacks just to get out of college, just to finally shed that skin. They've been there for what seems so long. And yeah, I'm excited because I think they'll be able to pass up and move their way in consideration to a top 5 quarterback selection.
And then, so I'm about to go through all of the quarterbacks. Okay. I don't think the Giants are going to do anything at quarterback. The Raiders need a quarterback. I don't think the Titans do. The Browns need a quarterback. The Saints need a quarterback. The Redskins, the Commanders do not. The Jets are the 4th team. Cardinals are the 5th team. Rams are the 6th team. The Vikings as a 7th team maybe. Dolphins as an 8th team, maybe. Not the Ravens, not the Cowboys, not the Chiefs, not the Panthers. Well, I take that back. The Panthers are in the QB market, but I think the Panthers are more likely to acquire a recycled Kyler Murray than they are to draft somebody this year.
That's where I think the Browns might do, man. I really do. With them naming Sanders today as a starter for the rest of the season, I think they should next year get an offensive lineman first round this year, and they should try to get a veteran. I do that parentheses because maybe someone who hasn't started yet but's been in the league for a good amount of time, like a Hendon Hooker or a Trey Lance or something. They should do that, in my opinion. Besides, go get another rookie quarterback.
So ultimately, I would say the Browns are close to. Some people are really down on Stefanski.
Yeah,
I will never be a wait till next year guy. I'm of the opinion that you draft a year early. You never say we're going to draft that next year. You're always better off drafting a year early. So, for example, if I know that my favorite team, the Buffalo Bills, has 3 offensive line contracts expiring in the next 2 years, you draft offensive line now.
Yeah.
Right? Like you should have drafted it last year, but we do have some young backups that we like. But my point being is, you have a runway to say we're going to be missing 3 starters based upon contracts expiring.
Mm-hmm.
That would be Osiris Torrance, who plays left guard, David Edwards, who plays right guard, and Connor McGovern, which plays center. All 3 of those contracts are either expiring this year or next year. So you need to draft 2 offensive line. Right now, you just do that right now so that there's a transition, but you always plan a year ahead.
Right.
Always. Right? The same way that that Taylor Rapp's contract is expiring it expires after 2026. So we still have him for 1 more year. But if you know that the safety contract is expiring, you draft another safety this year. Right? You always draft a year ahead. Right. So with quarterbacks, like with Cleveland, I would never advise any team to wait. So anyway, we were up to 9 teams that need quarterbacks when I got to the Panthers. The Steelers would be the 10th team.
Yeah, definitely.
It wouldn't surprise me if the Eagles took a quarterback. Granted, they took McCord last year. But if the Eagles have a lot of day 2 capital. So if they have to take a 3rd on Sawyer Robertson.
And that brings wouldn't that be just a great spot for a Darian Mensah? Wouldn't Mensah and Maeva would just one of those guys work perfect in there, sit for 1 or 2 years, maybe not a Jordan Love situation, but similar to do that. And then you come in there ready to go. I think one of those situations are going to entice one of these quarterbacks to jump out. Like you said, just like a Philly, that's perfect right there. Right. I think there's a couple of those in the league right now, in my opinion. A couple of those situations out there that's like, man, I don't know if I come back to college, roll the dice on 2 things. 1, getting hurt. 2, having the Cleveland Browns draft me. I mean, you just never know. So you just never know.
So the Eagles were the 11th team.
Yes.
The 49ers could be a 12th team. So
I believe that.
Purdy hasn't stayed healthy.
No, he hasn't been the same since the elbow injury, man. Yeah, that's like the new ACL, especially for the quarterback. It's like I think everyone wants to see how you respond off that injury these days. I think Burrow had the same injury as well.
So. Right. So I was able to get up to 12 teams, with the Colts being a 13th and the Jaguars being a 14th. Okay. So I just identified 14 teams that in the next 2 years, I think they're going to have a new quarterback. So what I'm trying to do is predict the future. So if I say those 14 teams, out of those 14 teams, I would venture to say 10 of those 14 will have new quarterbacks starting in either 2026 or 2027.
Agreed.
So
I think so.
Going to your point then, as we were looking at the Cade Klubniks, the Carson Becks, the Drew Allars, the Sawyer Robertsons of the world, the quarterbacks that are not going to go in the first 20 picks. Well, all those teams are going to need a player that is going to be capable of running the offense. And the next draft take, and if you watch this channel, you're going to hear me say this all the time. Your goal is to draft starters. It is not to draft all pros. So,
Yep,
for
same
example,
thing with college.
Yep. So if Caden McDonald is a first round pick at defensive tackle, your hope is that Caden McDonald is a starting defensive tackle. The hope is not that he is an all-pro defensive tackle or he is the second coming of Aaron Donald.
Right.
The goal is, can he fill a starting role on your 53-man roster? That's what you're expecting. Draft starters. So if you're a team that you think you're going to need a new starting quarterback, like I said, in like the next 24 games, and I gave a list of 14 teams. Look, Sawyer Robertson fits that description. Cade Klubnik fits that description. Drew Alar fits that description. Garrett Nussmeier, I think there's more risk there, but he still fits that description. He's going to be able, those guys are all going to be able to be a quote-unquote game manager for you,
right,
while you're still trying to find your next quarterback. Kind of thing.
Yes, and then like you said, the Eagles can go ahead and draft a quarterback, like you said, like a Sawyer Robertson this year, or like a Darian Minta this year, and then they could, maybe use if that works out, Jalen Hurts pick down the line, trade him for a first rounder, get some help if that works out with their backup. If it doesn't, that first rounder that we traded Jalen Hurts for, we can just turn around and get another quarterback. I think that's where a lot of teams are going to look at, man. And I think that's what's going to make a lot of these quarterbacks pull a trigger and put themselves in consideration.
Yep. So was there any other quarterback that you have on your board that we haven't mentioned yet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I stopped at 10 with Garrett Nussmeier. Then 11 was Trinidad Chambliss. So 12, I have Carson Beck. I think we're still going to see a Carson Beck somewhere, some down the line pop up in the league. Could San Fran get him late? You never know, a team like that. I have Katon Hauser out of East Carolina. I mentioned him. And then the curious case of Cole Payton out of North Dakota State. What is he going to play? After I've seen a lot more tape on him, in my personal opinion, I think the hype, I think just the shock factor is kind of wearing off for me initially. I think his release is it comes a little bit too low. People are saying some scouts would love him as a tight end. This guy could be an all-pro tight end, but he could also be a quarterback in the league as a backup. Definitely a backup. I do not see him as a starter. Just all what he wants to do. And then at 15, 16, and 17, at 15, I have Taylon Green out of Arkansas. At 16, I have Josh Hoover out of TCU. And then 17, rounding out my big board, is Jalen Daniels out of Kansas.
Okay. So Josh Hoover of TCU is likely going to get a return to school grade.
Okay.
We did cover him over the summer. We've covered him. Actually, we didn't podcast on him because when everybody was tossing the quarterbacks around, I said, well, Hoover is likely to return to school. So let's not use one of the 15 podcasts.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Yeah, I was kind of honestly stretching it with my 15, 16, 17. I kind of wanted to end it at Taylon Green, just because his size and his mobility, 6'6", 224, and can still move around. I think people are they'll probably end it right there. I think that.
Yeah,
I think you'll only see about 13 quarterbacks drafted.
Yep. So on average,
Maybe
about 13
11.
quarterbacks get drafted. To your point.
Okay.
Josh Hoover, this is a great name to discuss because if he's in this draft class, I think he's top 100.
Yeah, he could be. Because somebody's going to fall in love with him. Somebody's going to love the stability of him. He has the pro zip off the ball. If you don't like anything about his game, just the zip, that's hard to find. It's just hard to find. It's just not everywhere. A lot of guys can read the defense. A lot of guys can sell play action. A lot of guys, can throw it in the flat on the move on time. But not many guys can throw it hash to hash quick, quick, fast, in a hurry with that natural zip. Yep. It reminds me of, that's what I think the X factor is with a Sorsby. I was wrong on Sorsby. I put my hand up, and I wasn't that high on Sorsby coming into this year. And then he's definitely, he put his team on his back and won a lot of games for Cincinnati this year.
Yep. So Josh Hoover, I saw TCU. Was TCU playing North Carolina on Monday night, the opening weekend, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I was watching that game, and just in that one game, you see a quarterback that was running his offense, right? The ball is in his hands. He has to make decisions to throw. He can stand in the pocket. Now, I watched TCU several weeks later. They were in a situation where they had to throw a Hail Mary, and Josh Hoover's Hail Mary didn't go very far. Okay? So there's going to – if you have to run a horizontal passing game.
Yes.
Right.
Which is rare these days. I mean, that we know as I know I'm not as hasn't been around and haven't been blessed to see as much as football as you, but I'm still from the north-south era, but we just don't have a lot of north-south teams. He could with a guy who can't throw it 60 yards. I think I see a lot of people knocking on that, but it's like, okay, how many offenses in the NFL are asking their quarterbacks to throw it 60? He's weirdly fits in a lot of the offenses, in my opinion. But yeah, I think the arm strength's definitely a red flag.
So one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time is Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Okay, I love it.
Okay,
he killed Brian Brom's career.
So I'm going to say Josh Hoover is Ryan Fitzpatrick light.
Okay.
And maybe it's because I hold Harvard in higher esteem than TCU.
Hey, Harvard's got ballers.
Yeah. So my point being is that what you liked about Fitzpatrick, no matter what team he went to, right? Because he played, I believe, for St. Louis, then he played for Cincinnati, then he played for Buffalo, then Tennessee, and then Miami. And I know that there were a lot of other teams.
He played for a couple of teams twice.
If you ever see this podcast, man, I loved you. I love you on Amazon, and I love your personality. He showed up to a Bills game when it was freezing and took his shirt off, and there's a GIF about it and stuff. But I love, as a human being, I love Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, he is a good dude.
And as a quarterback, no matter where he went, that offense functioned. That's Josh Hoover.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. He kind of gives me that. With Fitzpatrick, Fitzmagic. They're talking about McCown. McCown was always been able to plug in any of the McCowns. I think Fitzpatrick took that branding to a whole new level of a plug and play guy. I mean, he took it to a whole new level.
Yep. And, Fitzpatrick as a quarterback could get you out of bad plays, right? If the play called is bad, he knows how to get you out of the bad play.
Right.
These are the types of things that Josh Hoover can execute your offense. You will need to put players around him. Now, I think next year I'm a huge TCU fan because they also have, is it Jordan Dwyer?
Yeah, and then they have.
I love Jordan Dwyer as a wide receiver. So TCU has some players, and they also have an edge who's probably in next year's draft. So TCU has 3 players in the 2027 draft that I've got kind of my eye on. But going back to the list of quarterbacks that you listed, Trinidad Chambliss was another one who's in this class. I believe Joey Aguilar from Tennessee is also in this draft class. I don't think
I like Joey Aguilar.
Can't go back to school, can he?
No, he cannot. I do not think he can, and I'm glad you brought him up because I definitely should have him in here. I would have Aguilar, now that you say it, above Taylor Green. I was really rooting for him against Pavia. I like Aguilar. I like some of his traits. He has very similar traits to Carson Beck. I'm not taking it back. He has very similar traits to a Klubnik. They're kind of similar. They're not too off. So, I don't know if he's draftable, though. We'll see if he gets drafted. I think these teams get really stingy at the 6th or 7th round, of taking quarterbacks. They're like, we'll just sign them. And then some guys would just rather go undrafted to choose where they want to go to camp at and compete. So, I don't know. I don't know if I would have him drafted. And then, I think I would have him slightly behind Chambliss. Aguilar. Yeah.
Right. And again, so you're bringing any of these guys in, none of them is starting week 1.
No.
Right? So ultimately, you're going to be able to put a quarterback in your room, and we came up with a situation where we think 14 teams need to change their quarterback in the next 24 games. And the reason why I said the next 24 games Okay. So the next 24 games, there's 2 or 3 games left this year. There's 17 games left for next year.
Right.
And then you get 4 games into your next season. And is Matthew Stafford still have the same zip on his arm? Does Tua still have the same zip on his arm? Have you walked away from Kyler Murray already? Have you walked away from Daniel Jones already?
Yeah.
Right.
And then you have to ask yourself, like, which one of these guys are going to walk off of the field on their own? Is Matthew Stafford going to have to get pulled off the field? I think there's a lot of these guys that, they'll start the first 4 weeks and then get pulled. But I think some of these guys, like Matt Stafford, I could see him just retired in the offseason, just, saving himself that 4 weeks. But who knows?
Right. And then there's teams, and I think the Saints and the Browns are actually really good examples of this a couple of years apart. So the Saints knew that they were going to have to move on from Derek Carr. So the Saints are a great example of a team where I said you have to draft a year or 2 early. They knew they wanted to move on from Derek Carr. They did, now I'm trying to remember the names of the quarterbacks. Was it Rattler? They have
Rattler and Shuck right now.
They drafted Shuck, and Shuck is the starting quarterback now. So they did a good job of putting quarterbacks in the room, and then the Saints could realistically not draft a quarterback this year because they can still say they're on the Shuck experiment for
that'll last 2 years.
4 more games. And this goes back to why I say you need 24 more games, because most quarterback evaluations in the NFL are about 24 games. You get 1 full year and then part of the next year. That's your evaluation as a quarterback.
If you make it to a starter.
Once you become the starter,
right,
the coach is going to give you about 24 games.
And what's crazy, it's like your evaluation as a backup is even shorter.
Yes.
It's very short. Your evaluation from are you in the league or a QB2 is slim window. You're either, for a lot of teams, you're not on their roster or you're a quarterback too, and they have to find that out quick.
So you're a Packers fan, correct?
Yes, Packers fan. Yes.
How many quarterbacks are on the 53?
Put me on. I mean, is
it just Love and Willis?
Yeah, we're always revolving. I know we had Danny Etling at one time. Then we have
Clifford. Practice squad.
Well, Sean Clifford was our last one, I think, when we had 3 for a little bit. Let me see here, because we've already Malik Willis is our backup, so we have Malik Willis backup, Jordan Loves. Yeah, those are the only 2 we have on our active roster. Right. We're always switching we're one of those teams where we always switch our practice squad quarterback. It's like,
I think every team switches the practice
squad. It's all the time. It's like always. It's very consistent. We always go through them.
So there's a statistic, and I believe it's so NFL teams have a 53-player roster.
Yeah.
On average, NFL teams have 71 players on their 53-player roster throughout the season, based on injuries, cutting players who aren't playing well, things of that nature. Mm-hmm. So you're basically, to your point, most teams' practice squads turn over 100% during the season. Yeah. So if the practice squad is 16 players, I bet Buffalo, for me, has already had 32 players on the practice squad this year.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. It's weird how quick they go up and down, and it's wild. I've known a couple guys that's been in that situation, a practice squad. It's wild. It's a crazy life to live.
So if you're a quarterback, once you hit the 53, listen to Tom Brady. When you get your one shot, you have to take advantage of it. And if you do well, you have some initial success early, you're going to get 24 games.
Especially in some franchises like Cleveland.
So even when Buffalo was a dumpster fire, EJ Manuel got about 24 starts. Trent Edwards got about 24. JP Lossman got about 24. Maybe a little bit more, but you will usually know if the quarterback is your guy after the second season has started.
But that's why I was really confused why your Buffalo Bills didn't give my guy Brian Braum a fair shake. But Fitzmagic came in, man, and he just took it
Yep.
over. So I understand.
Right. Oh, and Chan Gailey liked Fitz. There was a
They
connection.
did, yeah. They could tell they loved that guy. As soon as he came in, they're like, "This we got a gold mine right here."
Right.
They loved him.
Exactly. So going back to the quarterback big board in this draft, there's going to be, so again, out of the 14 teams where we could theoretically say they're going to move on from their quarterback in the next, basically by 2027,
Yeah.
Those quarterbacks are replaced. There's enough quarterbacks in this draft, even with the guys that go back to school. Because like you mentioned, Taylon Green.
Yeah.
Taylon Green needs some development.
For sure.
But
he should probably
he's going to be on an NFL roster next year.
Oh yeah, he's just too much of an athlete. In my opinion, would great to take a Logan Thomas route or a Fernando Mendoza route. Switch to tight end. I think he's a heck of an athlete. That's what I thought Jalen Milroe should have done. I thought Jalen Milroe was a guy who really benefited as an H-back or a tight end. But what do we know?
And then and again, so I like the Jalen Milroe. So again, Seattle signed Sam Darnold, and the logic that I would use, like as I'm projecting it, is they signed Sam Darnold, and they think they're going to move on from Darnold within the next 24 games. Right?
Yeah.
You have to draft Milroe. So they drafted Milroe. Now, if Darnold balls, you've got a Jalen Milroe sitting on the bench for 3 straight years. Yeah. So in 2028, Seattle's going to have to revisit the Jim draft professor logic of if you're moving on from your quarterback in the next 24 games, the best time to draft one is now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just curious. That just all goes to back. What are the freaking Cleveland Browns going to do? Are they going to, is it going to be a Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, Fernando Mendoza room? And then they're going to be shopping Deshaun Watson all summer. Like, how is that going to play out? I've seen so many mocks with Fernando Mendoza going to the Browns. I get it, but I don't get it. So I don't get too much anything they do.
And the Jets have a little bit more draft capital than Cleveland. I think the biggest difference is Cleveland has Jacksonville's pick, which is 21st right now, whereas the Jets have, I think it wasn't Dallas's pick. They have the Colts pick, which is a little bit later. So, but the Jets have 2 second-round picks. The Browns only have 1.
Okay.
I think the Jets have more ammo to move up than the Browns do. But the Jets have to move up higher than the Browns do as well, right? The Browns right now are sitting at 4th in the draft order. They only have to move up basically ahead of the Raiders, whereas the Jets have to move up ahead of the Browns and the Raiders.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm going to stick with this. You laying that out just makes me feel even more strongly about it. I think Atlanta's going to trade one of those for their picks and take a quarterback. That's what I really think. I'd be so surprised if Cleveland takes a quarterback. If you have a
quarterback on their first contract, you have to give them 24 games. It goes back, right? So Penix will not have hit the 24 games at the end of the season. So you're going into next season with Penix as the guy.
They know they're going to go in with Penix, but I think they also know they're going to be moving on from Penix really soon. Like really soon. Like they're just kind of like letting him just have his, few games to call himself an NFL starter. They're kind of like how they did with Ritter. It feels like what they're doing with Penix now. They're like, okay, we're going to throw you out there one more year because you're definitely going next year.
Okay, so another quarterback theory from Jim. So again, you got this podcast is just full of Jimism. Okay, so a coach doesn't get to pick 2 quarterbacks unless that coach is really, really good.
I've heard that theory. That's a good, I love it. I like it.
So to your point, the coach in Atlanta is tied to Penix. If they move on from Penix, I think the coach is done. Right? You're better
But
off.
Penix is hurt all the time. He's hurt.
But it's not about, like, I know that you are not favorable on Penix.
Right.
But the coach and the quarterback are married together. And if the quarterback fails, the only coaches that I can think of in NFL history that got to pick 2 quarterbacks for their team and have success, both of them are in Philadelphia. So Andy Reid was able to move on from Donovan McNabb and keep his job. He didn't last much longer, but he was able to transition from McNabb to Michael Vick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, but he chose a second quarterback. He did not draft. I mean, they had Kevin Cobb on the roster, and Vick ultimately beat out Cobb.
God, it took forever. They took forever giving Vick that job. I remember Andy Reid he started Cobb like 2 or 3 games too long.
Right. And then the current Eagles coach was able to move on from Carson Wentz to Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
So the 2 times that we could document that a coach could survive the quarterback change were with the Eagles. Belichick didn't last through the quarterback transition after Brady, right? Mac Jones started. Belichick got to pick that quarterback, and whether or not Belichick really picked him, maybe there's some negotiation there, discussion there. But basically, Mac Jones sacked Bill Belichick. Had that pick turned out better, Belichick would probably be the winningest coach in NFL history, right?
Yeah, and that's right? You make a good point. I cannot believe they took Mac Jones.
Right, Brian Billick almost got to do it twice. So Brian Billick drafted a quarterback. Okay, so he got to pick Trent Dilfer. Wait, Dilfer was drafted by the Bucs. So they had Trent Dilfer.
On the Ravens, right?
On the Ravens, and the Ravens went to a Super Bowl.
He had
Kyle Bowler.
Yes, and then on the bench they had a guy who used to play the legend that played for the Eagles. I thought they had him on the end of the bench too.
So Kyle Bowler was a high draft pick by the Ravens. I don't know if it was round 1 or round 2. He won me my first fantasy championship ever because that was a year I had like Michael Vick on the team and Vick kicked butt. It was when Vick was with the Eagles.
Yeah.
Or no, excuse me, when Vick was with the Falcons. But anyways, so Vick was kicking butt but was injured. So I had to go to the waiver wire, picked up Kyle Bowler. He threw 5 touchdowns that week, and I was a fantasy champion. But I think that was Kyle Bowler's only good game of his career.
Yeah.
Like, dumb luck, right? But Brian Billick in Baltimore did not survive the quarterback change. You could make an argument that Pete Carroll survived the quarterback change in Seattle because he had Russell Wilson. He was able to move on to Geno. But the qualification was Carroll didn't get a chance to draft 2 quarterbacks. And that's what I mean. So like you look at a situation like the Browns, how many quarterbacks has Stefanski been able to pick and they're not working out? That's a problem. Right. And actually,
Stefanski, that's Mr. Sirianni, my bad.
Right. And then you look in Chicago, Ryan Poles has been able to choose 3. How does he still have a job? Right. Because he chose Trubisky, then he chose Fields, and now he's chosen Caleb Williams.
And that's right. It's like all about what relationship you have with the owner. Look at Mike Tomlin. I mean, Mike Tomlin's finally about to get the boot, and he's been trying to replace Big Ben for how long now?
So Mike Tomlin has been able to draft quarterbacks, but I would argue that the picks haven't been successful.
I think he got some leeway with Dwayne Haskins passing, in my opinion. Rest in peace, Dwayne Haskins.
Right. So you look at a situation, actually, I think Pittsburgh is a great example of this conversation, right? So how do you move on from a quarterback? So Tomlin drafts Roethlisberger, and then they draft Pickett the year they need him. Because I think everybody knew that Pittsburgh was drafting a quarterback that year because I think Big Ben had already retired.
Yeah. He's like, it's definitely like everybody knew it was his last year.
Right.
was
So
a year
they
too late.
needed Pickett. Pickett was the first round pick.
Yeah.
Pickett didn't work out, but somehow Tomlin still has a job. That's the privilege of working for the Rooney family.
And the privilege of a Super Bowl.
Right. But I mean, Brian Billick had won a Super Bowl, but he couldn't survive Kyle Bowler.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
That's true. Exactly. It's all about, I think it comes down all about the relationship.
Right. Because if you're resetting a clock, right, you're going to want to come in as a new head coach with a plan. And like, here would be an example, like Miami. If Miami fires their head coach, the new head coach is not going to want to be saddled with the old head coach's quarterback.
Right. Yeah, we see it all the time at college.
And I mean, that's what happened in New York with Daniel Jones.
Right.
Brian Daboll chose to accept the previous coach's quarterback, and that was a dumb decision when you should have extended Saquon Barkley.
Right.
Not Daniel Jones. Right. You have to know where, like, how to build that team. So when you're looking at quarterbacks that need to be sunset off of a roster, right? So like the Jets will need to sunset away from Russell Wilson, but the Jets, picking seventh, they're going to need to add to their QB room. They're better off trading up to get one than they are trying to get one of these game managers that Daniel and I are talking about later.
Yeah.
In the draft.
Yeah. And I think just like if they can go about the process the right way, we're going to look at Aller. We're going to look, some of these guys as absolute steals, in my opinion. I really do think they have an opportunity to be really good steals.
You see, and as long as they can manage the game and be an NFL starter, it's a good draft pick.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a good draft pick, even if you do it, with pick 30, 31, 32, there's going to be a lot of teams that at the end of round one, if you want to come up and get a quarterback so that you get the fifth-year option, they'll trade out of that first-round spot, and it costs you a fourth-round pick.
Yeah, I think the Giants are going to trade down, in my opinion. I think we're going to see a couple teams trade down this year.
Yep. So, Daniel, why don't we pause for podcaster identification? Do you want to let everybody watching know about Home Squad Sports and everything that you do?
Yeah, I'm one half of Home Squad Sports here with Dalton. You'll see him on the 9 o'clock segment here at Draft Professor. And we cover college football on a week-to-week basis. We do top 6 games every week, and we interview players. We got some very talented guys coming on the program here soon. We got USC commit Brett Kolje coming on next week. So we go every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern and Wednesday at 8 p.m. You can catch us all every social there at Home Squad Sports.
Welcome to the Draft Professor, everybody. My name's Jim. Draft Professor is a group of 110 people, and about 30 of us podcast. So Daniel podcast with Draft Professor, podcast with Home Squad. So we have a lot of content creators that podcast with us. They're usually on another channel too, and we cover the draft every day. So we just got done doing 5 weeks of deep quarterback discussions. Today we were kind of summarizing every player. And then next week we will have different content. So every weekday at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern, there's a podcast here, Draft Professor. And because this is draft season, or we're about to start it, you will see a lot of guests start coming on the station in January. So you get to meet a lot of new people, find a lot of different content. And that's kind of what we're all about. So for Daniel, myself, for the 110 people at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for tuning in. We have another podcast that starts in 1 hour. Have a good night, everybody, and see you on our next podcast.